The galaxy of Warhammer 40K is a dark and unforgiving place, a theater of endless war where hope is but a faint glimmer amidst the crushing tides of despair. Amidst the chaos of unending conflicts, where the imperium of man struggles to maintain its dominion against heretics, Xenos, and the ravenous powers of the warp, legends are born, some glorious, others shrouded in mystery. One such legend stands apart from all others, veiled in an aura of spectral dread and whispered tales, the Legion of the Damned. These ghostly figures, clad in scorched ceramite and adorned with flames, appear without warning at the darkest hours, their arrival heralded by silence as chilling as the void itself. Where they tread, annihilation follows for the enemies of the Emperor, and salvation, or something akin to it, is delivered to the Imperium's faithful. Yet their presence raises more questions than answers, leaving behind echoes of terror and awe. In the grim annals of the Imperium, the Legion of the Damned is neither celebrated nor fully understood. Official records are sparse, often reduced to fragments of battlefield reports or the unverified accounts of survivors. Yet their influence is undeniable, their interventions altering the outcomes of countless battles, turning tides that seemed hopelessly lost. To some, they are avenging angels, a manifestation of the Emperor's wrath. To others, they are a harbinger of doom, their flaming forms a reminder that even victory comes at a cost. But who, or what, are these spectral warriors? What purpose drives them to intervene in the Imperium's darkest hours? Are they truly an extension of the Emperor's divine will, or do their origins point to something far more unsettling? To understand the Legion of the Damned, one must first venture into the depths of the Imperium's history, uncovering the layers of myth, tragedy, and enigma that surround them. This is the story of the Legion of the Damned, their rise from obscurity, their haunting interventions, and the enduring mysteries that cloak them in the shadows of Warhammer's endless war. As we delve into their tale, the truth may prove as elusive as the specters themselves, flickering like a flame in the void, ever out of reach yet impossible to ignore. The story of the Legion of the Damned cannot be told without acknowledging the key players whose fates intertwine with these spectral warriors. While they remain elusive, their presence inevitably impacts those who encounter them, whether directly or as distant figures whose lives are forever shaped by their haunting interventions. At the center of the narrative stands the Imperium of Man, a vast and crumbling empire held together by faith, force, and sacrifice. Countless lives are devoted to maintaining its survival in the face of annihilation. Within this empire, the Astra Militarum and the Adeptus Astartes are the Imperium's shield and sword, bearing the brunt of unending wars. It is often their desperate pleas for salvation that seem to summon the Legion's arrival, though no mortal call appears to guide them. The Imperium's defenders, from common guardsmen to battle-hardened commanders, serve as unwilling witnesses to events they can neither explain nor control. Another pivotal presence is the Adeptus Mechanicus, whose obsession with deciphering technological mysteries makes them both awed and disturbed by the Legion. To the priesthood of Mars, the Legion's armaments defy logical classification, appearing as relics of forgotten ages, yet somehow untouched by time's decay. Their attempts to document or claim any artifact left behind have led to frustration, for the Legion's appearances leave behind nothing but ashes and fleeting rumors. The Inquisition, an organization tasked with safeguarding humanity from internal and external threats, views the Legion with a mix of reverence and suspicion. Their enigmatic nature places them in a precarious position within the Inquisition's scrutiny. While some Inquisitors believe the Legion to be a manifestation of the Emperor's divine judgment, others whisper that they may be corrupted echoes of something darker. The Ordo Malleus, with its mandate to combat warp-born threats, keeps an especially close watch, wary of anything that appears beyond mortal understanding. The Adeptus Ministorum, the religious backbone of the Imperium, plays an equally significant role. The Legion's spectral flames and unearthly aura are often interpreted as signs of the Emperor's intervention. Ecclesiarchal preachers weave tales of their miraculous appearances into sermons, painting them as angels of retribution. Some missionaries even attribute battlefield victories solely to their arrival, further cementing the Legion's place in the Imperium's theological mythos. However, this reverence is not universal. There are whispers among more cautious clergy that warn against blind veneration, fearing that faith in the unknown may lead to dangerous fanaticism. Opposing the forces of humanity are the countless enemies that inhabit the grim darkness of the galaxy. From marauding orc warbands to insidious chaos cults, many have come to fear the Legion's arrival on the battlefield. To these foes, the sudden materialization of blackened figures wreathed in fire is an omen of impending doom. The Legion's reputation as an unstoppable force precedes them, breaking enemy morale before the first shot is fired. Even among the enemies of the Imperium, there are those who seek to understand the Legion. Certain Chaos warlords, driven by arrogance or madness, have attempted to discern the truth behind their existence. Their efforts often end in madness or destruction, for the Legion's true nature remains impenetrable, and those who delve too deeply into forbidden knowledge rarely escape unscathed. Finally, there are the survivors, those who have borne witness to the Legion's intervention and lived to tell their tale. These individuals, whether warriors or civilians, carry the burden of their experiences, often unable to explain what they saw. Their stories vary in detail, but the core remains the same. Salvation delivered at the hands of faceless warriors who vanish as swiftly as they appear. These accounts, though often dismissed as fabrications or exaggerations, persist across centuries, forming an unbroken thread that stretches through the Imperium's blood-stained history. Thus, the Legion's tale is shaped not only by their spectral presence, but also by those who stand on either side of their haunting path. The protectors of humanity, the forces of darkness, and the ordinary souls caught between. The emergence of the Legion of the Damned is rooted in an era defined by tragedy, desperation, and the inexorable unraveling of once mighty forces. The stage for their arrival was set long before their first recorded appearance, in the turbulent epochs when the Imperium's survival hung by a thread. This was an age of relentless war, where every victory came at a price so steep that even the Emperor's most devoted servants questioned the cost. Countless catastrophic wars throughout the galaxy strained the Imperium to its breaking point. During these campaigns, entire worlds burned, fortress systems fell, and revered chapters of the Adeptus Astartes faced extinction. The constant assaults from both within and beyond human space left scars that would never fully heal. It was in this grim crucible of destruction that the seeds of something far darker were planted. Tales of loyal warriors pushed beyond the limits of endurance, left stranded and betrayed by fate, began to surface. Some whispered that the desperate cries of abandoned defenders echoed through the void, unanswered by their allies, but heard by forces unknown. Amid this galactic turmoil, the warp's malevolent influence loomed ever larger. It is a realm of immaterial madness that feeds on despair, hope, and rage in equal measure, capable of twisting reality itself. This unrelenting presence of the warp seeped into battlefields where death and suffering reached unimaginable levels. There were battles so drenched in carnage that the air itself seemed to quiver with residual agony. Entire planets became monuments to mass slaughter, their surfaces marred by broken strongholds, forgotten graves, and the charred remnants of shattered regiments. It was in these forsaken places, where war reached its most horrifying crescendo, that strange phenomena began to manifest. Reports described sudden drops in temperature, ghostly flickers of flame that burned cold, and whispers that seemed to drift from nowhere. These occurrences were dismissed as hallucinations or the aftermath of traumatic stress. But as these anomalies became more frequent, their significance grew harder to ignore. Desperation and fear fueled the rise of rumors that something otherworldly had begun to stir within the galaxy's darkest corners. As the Imperium's defenders endured defeat after defeat, the belief in divine intervention gained momentum among both warriors and civilians. For many, there was solace in the idea that the Emperor's wrath could take form when all else failed. This belief was born not only of faith, but also of necessity. In an age where conventional reinforcements often arrived too late, the idea of spectral salvation became a psychological shield against despair. Prophets and oracles within the Imperium spread fragmented tales of avenging figures wreathed in flame, reinforcing the notion that salvation could come from the least expected places. Yet, the forces of chaos, ever opportunistic, also took note of these whispers. They sought to corrupt or control anything that could shift the balance of power in their favor. Warp-bound seers and heretical warlords attempted to discern whether these spectral manifestations were tools of order or some manifestation of malevolent trickery. For their part, Chaos forces found themselves on the receiving end of unexplainable defeats, their ranks inexplicably decimated at the height of their triumphs. These setbacks only deepened the mystery surrounding these phantom warriors. The galaxy's descent into disorder created an atmosphere where myth and reality blurred. The Imperium's fractured communications across war zones allowed stories of supernatural intervention to take on lives of their own. Frontline reports became indistinguishable from campfire legends, and conflicting accounts of these spectral soldiers fueled a mixture of hope and paranoia. Some commanders grew wary of deploying troops to war fronts rumored to be haunted by apparitions, fearing the unknown as much as their tangible enemies. The Legion of the Damned, in whatever form they once existed, were shaped by these converging forces, grief and desperation from a galaxy teetering on the edge of annihilation. What once may have been mortal was reborn through fire and shadow into something more, forged in the crucible of untold loss. Whether the result of divine providence or cosmic tragedy, their rise was neither planned nor predictable. The events leading to their manifestation defy rational explanation, yet they follow an undeniable pattern of intervention when humanity faces annihilation. Ultimately, the very fabric of the Imperium's wars served as the unwitting stage for their arrival. The shared suffering of 1,000,000 battlefields, the cries of doomed warriors, and the silent, suffocating weight of defeat all contributed to the creation of a legend that would haunt the galaxy. This was not the rise of a conventional army, but the birth of something far more terrifying, an entity shaped by the pain and persistence of those who refused to be forgotten, emerging from the ashes to wage war against oblivion. The story of the Legion of the Damned unfolds across numerous battlefields, their appearances creating a strange and unsettling timeline of events. While their actions have never followed a predictable pattern, several key incidents highlight the gradual emergence of their legend. These events, scattered across different star systems and separated by centuries, form a narrative that defies conventional understanding. One of the earliest widely reported appearances occurred during a catastrophic siege on a distant Imperial colony engulfed by enemy forces. The defenders, outnumbered and entrenched in crumbling fortifications, faced certain death. Amid the smoke and ruin, reinforcements failed to arrive, and command had already deemed the planet lost. Just as the final line was about to collapse, black-armored warriors materialized from the shadows, their armor scarred and wreathed in spectral flame. Moving with terrifying precision, they decimated the invaders and vanished before the survivors could comprehend what had occurred. This incident set the tone for the Legion's mythos: sudden, brutal, and unexplained interventions. Over the following centuries, reports of similar incidents surfaced from war zones across the galaxy. An isolated void station, besieged by alien raiders, was saved by a force matching the same description. A heavily fortified outpost overrun by traitor legions was inexplicably retaken, with no signs of who had purged the heretics other than the haunting remains of enemies burned from within. These stories became increasingly common, often tied to the most hopeless battles where loyalists faced total annihilation. Despite this rising frequency, Each event shared consistent, unnerving details. The blackened ceramide armor, the silent yet unstoppable assaults, and the sudden disappearance of the Legion after victory created a pattern that military scholars and inquisitorial agents struggled to interpret. In some cases, their intervention came mere moments before planetary extermination orders were to be enacted. The survival of countless civilians and soldiers was often attributed solely to their actions, adding to the belief that they embodied divine will rather than mortal flesh. As the legend grew, so too did the stakes of their appearances. One of the most notable events unfolded during an invasion, led by a coalition of chaos warbands intent on corrupting an entire subsector. Imperial forces, stretched thin and worn down by attrition, were on the brink of collapse. In their desperation, they prepared a last-ditch defense, fully expecting to meet their end. However, when the vanguard of the heretic assault broke through the gates, the defenders saw not their own death, but spectral warriors emerging from the shadows. The invaders were annihilated with ruthless efficiency, their bodies consumed by cold, otherworldly flames that left nothing but charred remnants. This marked a turning point as it became evident that the Legion was not bound by location, command structure, or mortal limitations. However, the timeline also revealed unsettling irregularities. Some reports described their intervention in conflicts where the Imperium was seemingly assured of victory, yet the Legion appeared nonetheless, extinguishing not only the enemy, but sometimes entire battalions of loyalist troops caught in their path. These events added an element of fear, as it became unclear whether the Legion's actions were driven by allegiance or something beyond mortal morality. Were they an unwavering force for the Imperium's survival, or did they act according to their own unknowable criteria? Historical accounts began to catalog not only their victories, but also the profound psychological impact their presence left behind. Survivors described an overwhelming sense of foreboding, as if they had stood in the shadow of death itself. Veterans of these encounters often retired from active service, claiming that no war zone could compare to the dread they experienced in the Legion's company. These stories spread across battlefronts, inspiring soldiers to hold the line in hopes of divine rescue, or to fear that their fight was already lost if the Legion arrived. Over time, rumors emerged of worlds marked by their passing. Cities built upon the ruins of their battles were often said to experience strange phenomena, unexplained fires, chilling whispers, and dreams of burning figures standing watch over the dead. These lingering effects deepened the mystery surrounding their role in the galaxy's events and suggested that their actions were not confined to the moment of battle, but left echoes that resonated long after their departure. One of the final recorded incidents that solidified their legend occurred during a cataclysmic campaign in which an entire Imperial crusade was at risk of annihilation by an overwhelming Xenos horde. The Legion's arrival shattered the enemy's advance, turning an inevitable massacre into a decisive victory. The event left an indelible mark on Imperial doctrine, prompting renewed debates among military leaders and ecclesiarchal scholars alike about the nature of these spectral saviors. Thus, the timeline of the Legion's interventions paints a picture of an unpredictable yet undeniable force whose actions, though sporadic, have shaped the fate of countless worlds. Their pattern is one of extremes, appearing only at the brink of devastation and disappearing before any questions can be answered. These events form a grim testament to their purpose, whatever that may be. Whether viewed as harbingers of salvation or omens of destruction, their legacy is one written in fire, shadow, and the unyielding grip of the unknown. In the midst of the Imperium's darkest hours, there was one event that irrevocably solidified the Legion of the Damned as more than just battlefield myths. This turning point was not marked by a conventional triumph or defeat, but by the shocking implications of their intervention during a war that should have ended in despair. The incident became the focal point of countless debates among military leaders, ecclesiarchal preachers, and the Inquisition. It was a moment when survival seemed impossible, yet what transpired defied every expectation. The conflict erupted on a distant fortress world situated along a critical trade route vital for the supply lines of a major Imperial crusade. This planet, though heavily fortified, was isolated after successive waves of warp storms severed its astropathic communications. When the storms finally receded, a distress signal was intercepted, revealing that a massive invasion force of heretics had overwhelmed the planet's defenders. A relief fleet was dispatched, though the High Lords of Terra and Sector Command believed it would be too late. When Imperial reinforcements reached orbit, they were greeted with a scene of horror. The fortress city lay in ruin, and flames still smoldered across its once mighty bastions. Vox communication channels were flooded with static and broken fragments of desperate pleas. What they expected was the final remnants of resistance holding out against inevitable slaughter, but what they found defied every calculation. The enemy forces, once numbering in the tens of thousands, were completely annihilated. In their place were fields of charred bones, their armor twisted and blackened as if incinerated by something far beyond conventional weaponry. Amid the ruins, the surviving defenders, numbering only a fraction of their original strength, spoke of what had transpired in hushed tones. According to their fragmented accounts, the siege had reached its catastrophic end. The last defensive bulwark had fallen, and the heretics breached the inner sanctum of the command bastion. Yet in that final moment, when all was lost, an eerie silence descended upon the battlefield. Flames, cold and unnatural, erupted without warning, consuming the enemy in waves. Black-armored figures emerged from the wreckage, their movements methodical, their eyes aglow with spectral fire. They struck without issuing any orders or battle cries, eliminating the heretics with precision before vanishing into the shadows. It was not merely their intervention that marked this as a pivotal event, but the aftermath. Despite the complete obliteration of the invading forces, the defenders described their rescue with a mixture of awe and fear, as if unsure whether they had been saved or judged. When inquisitorial investigators arrived to debrief the survivors, inconsistencies in their testimonies heightened the mystery. Some claimed the spectral warriors marched through solid walls. Others insisted that the temperature around them dropped to freezing levels despite the blazing fires. What all agreed upon was that the Legion departed in total silence, leaving no trace of their presence except the eerie scorch marks that refused to fade. This incident sent shockwaves throughout the Imperium, as it was the first time that reports of the Legion's appearance reached the upper echelons of Imperial command without being dismissed as battlefield superstition. The Inquisition launched a classified investigation, yet no conclusive answers emerged. The Adeptus Mechanicus sent tech priests to analyze the site, but their findings only deepened the enigma. Attempts to retrieve data from damaged Auspex stations and recording units yielded nothing. Every mechanism capable of capturing footage was inexplicably destroyed. This absence of tangible evidence, combined with the testimony of hundreds of surviving witnesses, cemented the event as something extraordinary. The key decision stemming from this moment was not taken by the Legion, but by the Imperium itself. For the first time, the High Lords of Terra sanctioned the formal documentation of the Legion of the Damned as a strategic anomaly rather than dismissing their existence as myths. This act of recognition, though hesitant, led to widespread theological debates across the Adeptus Ministorum and tactical speculation among the Adeptus Astartes. The ecclesiarchy proclaimed that the Emperor's will manifested in ways beyond mortal comprehension, while some commanders quietly feared that their appearance signaled deeper cosmic repercussions yet to unfold. At the same time, certain inquisitors issued more ominous warnings. They questioned why the Legion's arrival seemed to coincide with moments of extreme failure, interpreting it not as salvation, but as a grim sign of judgment. One such decree infamously declared that where the Legion of the Damned tread, the line between life and death had already been crossed. These interpretations fueled a growing undercurrent of mistrust, particularly among military leaders who preferred to rely on tangible forces rather than unexplained phenomena. Ultimately, this event served as a grim reminder that not every question in the galaxy could be answered with certainty. The key shift that emerged was the realization that the Legion of the Damned operated on a plane of existence beyond the conventional rules of warfare. They were no longer dismissed as desperate hallucinations or embellishments of frightened soldiers. Their presence had become an undeniable reality, with implications that reached far beyond any one war zone. This singular incident marked the moment when the Imperium was forced to acknowledge that not every savior arrives with banners or demands allegiance, and that some interventions come shrouded in shadows and fire, their true nature forever hidden behind the veil of the unknown. The appearance of the Legion of the Damned left a profound and lasting imprint on the fabric of the Warhammer universe. Their interventions, seemingly driven by forces beyond mortal understanding, reshaped the perceptions of warfare, faith, and fear throughout the Imperium. Although their physical presence was fleeting, the ripples of their actions spread far and wide, influencing both allies and enemies in ways that went far beyond the battlefield. One of the most immediate impacts was the shift in the psychological state of the Imperium's forces. The belief that spectral warriors could manifest at the darkest moments to turn the tide of battle imbued countless soldiers with a fragile sense of hope. Tales of their interventions spread across regiments and war zones, becoming a crucial element of morale. On distant worlds facing overwhelming odds, whispers of the Legion's possible arrival acted as both a comfort and a deterrent against retreat. Yet, this belief was a double-edged sword. Commanders worried that some troops might hold unrealistic expectations of rescue rather than relying on conventional strategies and reinforcements. Stories of soldiers standing their ground in hopeless engagements, believing the Legion would save them, only to meet grim deaths, became cautionary lessons within the military hierarchy. The theological implications were equally significant. Within the ecclesiarchy, the Legion's existence became a symbol of divine wrath and the Emperor's enduring vigilance. Preachers incorporated tales of the fiery warriors into sermons, declaring their appearances as proof that the Imperium's faith was not in vain. Pilgrims journeyed to battlefields where the Legion had been reported, treating the charred remnants of those sites as sacred ground. Some even claimed that the scorched marks left in their wake bore patterns resembling holy symbols, fueling the belief that these enigmatic warriors were not just soldiers but celestial agents of the Emperor's will. However, not all within the Imperium viewed their interventions as a blessing. The Inquisition, particularly the Ordo Malleus and Ordo Hereticus, approached the matter with growing suspicion. The inability to predict the Legion's movements, combined with their seemingly supernatural attributes, made them a subject of unease. Many Inquisitors feared that the Legion's powers could be linked to the warp, viewing their spectral flames and sudden materializations as signs of an unstable and dangerous origin. Some operatives conducted secret purges of individuals who claimed to have received visions of the Legion, interpreting such experiences as potential signs of corruption. This paranoia spread among more zealous branches of the Inquisition, creating internal conflict about whether the Legion should be revered or feared. The technological ramifications of the Legion's actions were also profound. The Adeptus Mechanicus, obsessed with uncovering the truth behind any anomaly, became frustrated by their inability to analyze or replicate the Legion's war gear. Reports described their armor as ancient yet pristine, and their weapons as devastatingly effective but impossible to examine directly. Tech priests who attempted to study sites of intervention often found their instruments malfunctioning or their auspex readings erased entirely. This led to speculation that the Legion existed in a temporal or dimensional flux, further complicating any attempt to categorize their existence within the known laws of physics. The Mechanicus viewed this as both a failure and a tantalizing mystery, sparking endless debates within their ranks. The enemies of the Imperium also felt the Legion's influence in both tangible and intangible ways. For Chaos warbands, the sudden and unexplained defeats attributed to the Legion bred an undercurrent of fear and frustration. Heretical leaders, who often prided themselves on understanding the hidden forces of the warp, found themselves unable to comprehend or counter these ghostly warriors. Some believed the Legion to be a punishment for their betrayal, while others saw them as rival entities from the Immaterium, a force outside of the known pantheon of chaos. For alien species, such as the orcs, the Legion became an object of fascination. Some orc war bosses boasted that they had fought the Bernie ghosts and lived to tell the tale, their retellings exaggerated to the point of absurdity, but still rooted in genuine fear. The strategic implications were equally complex. The unpredictability of the Legion's interventions forced Imperial commanders to reconsider their plans. Some viewed the possibility of their arrival as a form of divine insurance, causing them to take risks they otherwise would not have. Others saw it as an uncontrollable factor that undermined the structured doctrines of Imperial warfare. Reports of entire campaigns hinging on the Legion's sudden appearance led to both celebrations of miraculous victories and reprimands for relying too heavily on what some viewed as luck rather than calculated tactics. On a more somber note, the Legion's interventions also left lasting scars on those who survived. Veterans who encountered them firsthand often struggled to reintegrate into normal service. They spoke of the overwhelming silence, the cold heat of the flames, and the eerie calm of their saviors. Many described feeling as though they had stood at the edge of death itself. Some were lauded as heroes, while others were sidelined due to their increasingly erratic behavior, haunted by what they had witnessed. These psychological aftershocks spread beyond individuals, permeating entire regiments and reinforcing the mystique surrounding the Legion's nature. The cumulative impact of the Legion of the Damned on the Imperium's wars, culture, and collective psyche is undeniable. Their presence, though brief and often unexplained, has altered the course of battles and shaped the narrative of faith and fate across the stars. Whether seen as saviors, omens, or something in between, their legacy is one that reverberates through every corner of the Imperium, a spectral reminder that in the grim darkness of the far future, even salvation can arrive in forms that defy understanding. Among the many mysteries surrounding the Legion of the Damned, their unique nature as spectral warriors is a subject of endless fascination and debate within the Warhammer community. Unlike any known military force within the Imperium, the Legion operates outside the bounds of conventional warfare, defying standard tactical expectations and even the laws of reality. This has led to significant speculation about the mechanisms that drive their existence, with fan discussions often focusing on the strange blend of corporeal and incorporeal elements that define them. One of the most frequently discussed aspects of the Legion is their seemingly supernatural method of deployment. Unlike standard Imperial forces that arrive via drop pods, teleportation, or Thunderhawk gunships, the Legion of the Damned appears without any visible form of transport. Eyewitnesses often describe their emergence as sudden and almost cinematic. Shadows lengthen unnaturally, and then, as though stepping from the very fabric of the void itself, the Legion takes form amidst the flames of battle. This phenomenon has given rise to countless theories, ranging from warp-based teleportation to the notion that they exist simultaneously in multiple dimensions and phase into reality when summoned by fate or circumstance. Closely tied to this is the nature of their flames, a feature that sets them apart from all other Astartes or Imperial forces. The fire that clings to their armor is often described as cold to the touch, despite appearing as if it should burn with ferocity. This strange contradiction has fueled debates about its origin, whether it is psychic in nature, a manifestation of the warp, or even some form of dimensional bleed from another plane of existence. The flames seem to serve both a symbolic and practical function, as they are known to instill overwhelming dread in enemies, while providing an eerie luminescence that frames the Legion in a spectral glow. Some fans speculate that the fire is not a traditional flame, but a physical manifestation of their suffering or a form of purgatorial energy tied to their tragic origins. Another fascinating aspect frequently explored is the state of their war gear. The Legion's armor appears ancient, heavily damaged and charred, yet it functions with the precision and resilience expected of Astartes' battle plate. However, there are inconsistencies that have led to deeper analysis. For example, while their power armor is clearly modeled after designs from bygone eras, It bears no identifiable chapter markings aside from occasional purity seals or devotional scripture seared directly into the ceramite. This absence of insignias, combined with the condition of their war gear, has fueled the idea that they may not simply wear their armor. They may be their armor, their forms inseparable from the relics they bear. This concept adds a spectral layer to their presence, making it unclear whether they are ghostly remnants of their former selves or something entirely transformed. One of the most captivating discussions revolves around the question of whether the Legion is bound by time in the same way as other mortal beings. There are reports of their intervention in battles that seem to contradict known timelines. In some stories, the Legion has appeared in conflicts described in ancient archives long before they were supposedly first documented. Some fans propose that they may exist outside of chronological constraints, appearing at pivotal moments across history, not according to linear time, but according to cosmic necessity. This theory raises the possibility that their presence is not tied to any singular moment of origin, but is instead part of a larger, incomprehensible cycle. The Legion's silence is another unique characteristic that sets them apart from any known Imperial forces. They do not issue commands, utter war cries, or communicate in any discernible way. This muteness has become a defining trait, one that enhances their ghostly reputation. Many fans interpret this silence as a form of penance, a vow taken after a cataclysmic betrayal or tragedy. Others believe it signifies their complete detachment from mortal constraints, suggesting that their consciousness has become something far removed from the needs or limitations of normal beings. This lack of communication adds to their aura of inevitability, as if they have no need to explain their actions or interact with those they save. Additionally, there is considerable intrigue surrounding the potential connection between the Legion of the Damned and certain unrecorded or lost events within the Imperium's history. Some fans speculate that their origin is tied to forgotten chapters or legions that were erased from official records for reasons known only to the highest authorities. This theory taps into the wider mystery of how much of the Imperium's history has been redacted or lost entirely. If true, it suggests that the Legion of the Damned may be more than mere ghosts. They may be a living reminder of past sins and failures, a manifestation of the Emperor's inability to prevent certain tragedies. Finally, there is the question of whether the Legion's actions are purely benevolent. While they have undeniably saved countless lives and turned the tide of war in humanity's favor, there remains an underlying question of motive. Some fans propose that their interventions may serve a purpose known only to them, with their loyalty directed more toward cosmic justice or retribution rather than blind allegiance to the Imperium's current rulers. This idea has led to theories that they may act in accordance with some forgotten aspect of the Emperor's will, or perhaps even a completely unknown doctrine that transcends mortal understanding. Ultimately, the Legion of the Damned stands as one of the most unique and enigmatic forces within the Warhammer universe. The mystery surrounding their methods, motives, and nature continues to captivate fans, sparking endless speculation about their true purpose and the limits of their power. Whether seen as spectral guardians, tragic remnants, or avengers bound to a higher calling, their legend remains steeped in the eerie glow of unanswered questions. The Legion of the Damned, by its very nature, is defined more by its collective presence than by individual identities. However, within the wider narrative of the Imperium, there are key figures whose fates have become entwined with their legend, individuals who either claim to have encountered the Legion firsthand, studied their appearances with near-obsessive devotion, or were forever changed by their interventions. One of the most prominent figures associated with the Legion is Chaplain Ignatius Grimaldus of the Black Templars. Known for his unshakable faith and indomitable will, Grimaldus survived the catastrophic defense of the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant during the Siege of Hellsreach. Accounts from that battle include whispered rumors of spectral warriors standing alongside the Black Templars when the temple's walls crumbled. Grimaldus never officially confirmed or denied these claims, but some believe his quiet reverence and refusal to speak ill of such tales suggest he may have witnessed their intervention. His resolute nature and ability to inspire hope in the face of despair made him one of the few warriors whose presence on the battlefield mirrored the aura of the Legion themselves, unyielding, solemn, and unwavering in their purpose. Another significant figure is Lord Inquisitor Cryptman, whose lifetime of battling against unimaginable threats often put him at the forefront of Imperial investigations into the inexplicable. Cryptman's ruthless pragmatism and willingness to sacrifice entire sectors to stem the tides of the Tyrannid menace earned him both infamy and begrudging respect. Yet, even he was unsettled by reports of the Legion's actions. In one of his more controversial moves, he spearheaded a secret inquiry into their nature, convinced that anything this powerful and uncontrollable posed as much of a threat as a blessing. Cryptman's greatest strength, his ability to view the galaxy's horrors without succumbing to fear, became his greatest weakness when it came to the Legion. His refusal to accept phenomena without explanation led to increasingly desperate measures, some of which bordered on the heretical in the eyes of his peers. Among those most fervently devoted to unraveling the Legion's mystery was Magos Theogenes of the Adeptus Mechanicus, a tech priest whose obsession with understanding anomalies bordered on madness. Theogenes believed that the Legion represented a technological singularity, a form of adaptive evolution that defied both biological and mechanical norms. His dedication to uncovering the truth behind their war gear and spectral abilities consumed his entire career. He amassed countless data fragments, cross-referencing battle reports, Auspex readings, and survivors' testimonies in an attempt to reconstruct a coherent theory. Yet despite his genius, Theogenes' relentless pursuit led him to a dark path. His inability to reconcile the Legion's unquantifiable nature drove him to dangerous experimentation, attempting to recreate similar effects through forbidden technologies. Ultimately, Theogenes was declared a rogue by his order, vanishing into obscurity after his research was condemned. On the battlefield, Commissar Helena Grime is another name often tied to the Legion. Renowned for her uncompromising discipline and ability to maintain order amidst chaos, Grime earned a reputation as a leader who could turn terrified recruits into hardened soldiers. Her legacy became inextricably linked to the Legion during the defense of Numinous Ridge, where she reportedly stood shoulder to shoulder with black-armored warriors as they repelled a massive traitor assault. Grime's sharp instincts and iron will allow her to command respect even in the face of overwhelming fear. Yet, in the aftermath of the battle, she became increasingly withdrawn, haunted by the experience. Though her actions cemented her as a hero within the Astra Militarum, her later writings reveal her deep uncertainty about the nature of her allies that day. She described them as both saviors and judges, their silence heavier than any condemnation. Another notable figure is Canoness Verena of the Order of the Martyred Heart, whose unbreakable faith in the Emperor often bordered on fanaticism. During the Siege of Hallow Reach, Verena's forces were overwhelmed by a combined chaos assault, and she prepared herself and her sisters for a final martyrdom. Instead, she bore witness to what she believed was a divine miracle, the arrival of the Legion of the Damned. Verena's accounts, recorded in devotional hymns and sermons, portrayed the Legion as angels of vengeance, sent by the Emperor to deliver the righteous and punish the wicked. Her unwavering conviction in this belief turned her into a beacon of inspiration for the ecclesiarchy, though some among the Ordo Hereticus viewed her claims with suspicion. Verena's strength lay in her absolute certainty, but her inability to question what she had witnessed made her vulnerable to manipulation by those who sought to use her testimony for political gain. Lastly, there is the enigmatic presence of a figure known only as the Burning Witness, whose name appears across disparate records from different sectors and time periods. This figure is described as a lone warrior, bearing the same spectral flames as the Legion, but acting outside of any known context for their interventions. Some believe the Burning Witness to be a fragment of the Legion's collective consciousness, while others theorize it is a lone survivor eternally wandering the galaxy, bound to appear where fate requires. The accounts vary, sometimes portraying the burning witness as a silent guardian who watches from afar, other times as an active participant in battles that otherwise would have remained obscure. Whether real or a myth born of trauma and storytelling, the burning witness has become a symbol for those seeking justice in a galaxy devoid of mercy. These individuals, though not members of the Legion themselves, reflect the complexity of how their legend shapes the perceptions, choices, and destinies of those who encounter them. Each of them, whether skeptic, believer, or investigator, represents a different facet of the mystery surrounding the Legion. Their lives serve as proof that the influence of the Legion extends beyond their spectral forms, leaving an indelible mark on those who strive to understand, or survive, their passage. The Legion of the Damned is surrounded by an array of unanswered questions and theories that fuel endless speculation among scholars, inquisitors, and Warhammer enthusiasts alike. These mysteries, steeped in equal parts myth and horror, have given rise to some of the most hotly debated topics in the lore. Each theory, no matter how outlandish, seeks to explain the Legion's cryptic nature, their origins, and their true purpose. One of the most prevalent questions revolves around the Legion's true origins. The most widely circulated theory ties them to a doomed chapter of the Adeptus Astartes, consumed by tragedy and resurrected through unknown means. Some suggest they may have once been a loyalist chapter who fell victim to betrayal or warp sorcery during a forgotten campaign. The most prominent candidates in fan discussions are the Firehawks chapter, who were declared lost with all hands after their fleet disappeared in the warp. While the similarities in iconography, flaming motifs, and the chapter's preference for purging their foes with fire lend credence to this theory, no definitive proof exists to confirm it. The absence of records from key moments in their history and the Legion's lack of formal insignia only deepens the mystery. Another major debate centers around their nature. Are they revenant spirits of the dead, or something entirely different? Some Imperial theologians argue that they are manifestations of the Emperor's will, sent as spectral guardians to intervene in moments of divine importance. This view holds that they may not be dead in the conventional sense, but rather elevated to a higher state of existence where their mortal limitations no longer apply. Conversely, others believe they are trapped souls, perhaps bound by penance or punishment, who have been denied peace until they fulfill some cosmic purpose. This idea presents them not as agents of salvation, but as entities caught in an endless cycle of war, driven by an insatiable need to atone. Their connection to the warp is another subject of fierce discussion. While many accounts describe their abilities, such as phasing into battle and vanishing without a trace, as warp phenomena, their lack of malevolence complicates this assumption. The warp is typically synonymous with corruption, mutation, and destruction, yet the Legion's actions are seemingly devoid of selfish ambition or chaotic influence. This has led some to propose that they exist within a pure aspect of the warp, one that is rarely seen due to the overwhelming corruption caused by chaos. This theory suggests that the Imperium may contain unknown forces that can be harnessed without succumbing to corruption, though such an idea is treated with suspicion by the Imperium. The question of their independence also looms large. Do they act on their own accord, or are they bound to some higher directive? The consistency of their interventions, always at moments of dire need, suggests a deliberate strategy. Yet, the lack of communication or visible command structure leaves room for the possibility that they are reacting instinctively rather than following orders. Some fan theories propose that they are driven by echoes of long-forgotten oaths, their actions guided by remnants of duty etched so deeply into their being that they continue to fight long after their physical forms have perished. Others suggest a more ominous scenario, that they are pawns in a greater game, their presence orchestrated by unseen forces manipulating them for purposes unknown. The Legion's silence is another aspect that fuels speculation. Their refusal to speak or engage with their allies in any meaningful way raises the unsettling possibility that they cannot communicate, or perhaps choose not to. Some theorists propose that this silence is not due to reverence or discipline, but is a sign of their torment, a permanent severing of their ability to connect with the living. Others interpret their silence as a mark of their singularity, a way to remain apart from mortal concerns as they fulfill their eternal mandate. If they are truly disconnected from time and space, their inability to speak may be a consequence of existing outside the framework of normal reality. One of the most controversial theories is that the Legion's appearance may not always be a blessing. While they have saved countless Imperial lives and turned the tide of numerous battles, their interventions often come at a great cost. In several accounts, their arrival coincided with mass destruction, not only of the enemy, but also of Imperial assets, fortifications, and sometimes entire cities. This has led to the chilling notion that the Legion may not distinguish between friend and foe in the traditional sense. Instead, their purpose could be to cleanse everything in the path of corruption or failure, leaving only ashes behind. This interpretation raises the possibility that the Legion is not a force for good or evil, but rather a purifying fire that seeks to erase imperfection from existence, regardless of allegiance. Another intriguing theory is tied to time itself. There are legends that describe the Legion appearing in conflicts recorded centuries apart, with descriptions of their appearance and actions remaining eerily consistent. This has led some to suggest that the Legion may not experience time linearly. If true, this would explain why their appearances seem to defy historical continuity and why their tactics remain unchanged despite the passage of millennia. If they are unstuck in time, they may be responding to events in a sequence incomprehensible to mortal beings, further complicating any attempt to predict their next move. The question of their eventual fate remains unanswered. Are they destined to fight eternally, or will there come a moment when their purpose is fulfilled? Some believe that their final appearance will coincide with a galaxy-shaking event, perhaps during the end times prophesied by Imperial seers. Others hold out hope that they will one day be released from their endless war, allowed to rest after millennia of sacrifice. However, such speculation is laced with uncertainty, as the Imperium has never seen anything that suggests the Legion's journey has an endpoint. Ultimately, these questions are unlikely to be answered definitively, as the nature of the Legion of the Damned defies mortal comprehension. Their legend persists as one of the most enduring enigmas of the Warhammer universe, captivating both lore masters and commanders alike. In the absence of clear answers, the Legion remains a beacon of both dread and wonder, an eternal reminder that not all mysteries are meant to be solved. The long-term impact of the Legion of the Damned on the galaxy remains an unresolved and haunting question. Their sporadic, unpredictable interventions have already altered the course of countless wars, but what lies ahead is even more unsettling. The very nature of their existence suggests that their influence could either strengthen the Imperium during its darkest trials, or unravel it further by deepening the paranoia and fear that grips its institutions. In the grand scheme of a galaxy consumed by eternal conflict, the Legion's continued presence raises pressing concerns about their role in the future and whether their actions will ultimately aid or hinder humanity. One of the most significant potential consequences of their ongoing appearances is the reinforcement of religious extremism within the Imperium. The Ecclesiarchy's insistence that the Legion represents the Emperor's wrath has already emboldened radical sects to interpret their every intervention as a divine mandate. In the long term, this could lead to further fragmentation of Imperial dogma, as factions within the faith twist the meaning of their actions to justify purges, crusades, and the rejection of allies deemed insufficiently devout. The more that the Legion's existence is mythologized, the greater the risk that their legacy could be weaponized to sow discord within the Imperium itself, fueling unnecessary conflicts and dividing its already fragile institutions. However, the flip side of this influence could also be a strengthening of Imperial unity, particularly in the face of galaxy-wide calamities. The Legion's reputation as saviors appearing at the brink of annihilation has instilled a form of resilience within Imperial forces. The hope, however tenuous, that intervention might come at the direst hour could bolster the willpower of both soldiers and civilians. Should the Imperium harness this narrative carefully, it could serve as a powerful symbol of perseverance, inspiring unity in the face of despair. Yet, this delicate balance between faith and reliance on legends could easily shift into dangerous complacency, as military leaders might overestimate their chances of salvation rather than focus on practical strategies. The potential for schism within the Inquisition is another long-term consequence that could have galaxy-altering repercussions. The Legion's unexplained nature already fuels sharp divides among inquisitorial factions. Some see them as a benevolent force, while others view them as a potential harbinger of doom. If this internal conflict grows, it could lead to dangerous fractures within the Inquisition itself, weakening its ability to counter the Imperium's internal threats. In a worst-case scenario, entire war zones could be compromised by conflicting agendas, with some Inquisitors seeking to invoke the Legion as protectors, while others attempt to eradicate anything connected to their presence out of fear of warp contamination. This schism could cripple the Imperium's ability to maintain order at a time when its survival demands unwavering coordination. Beyond the Imperium, the Legion's continued appearances could have a profound impact on humanity's enemies. The fear they instill within Xenos factions, chaos warbands, and heretical cults has already shifted the dynamics of war in certain theaters. Some alien races, such as the Tau and Eldar, may attempt to study the patterns of their interventions to determine whether they can be predicted or countered, leading to new and unexpected alliances formed out of mutual curiosity or fear. Alternatively, Chaos champions and seers of the warp might seek ways to harness or corrupt the Legion's spectral power for their own ends. If any such attempt succeeds, it could lead to an unprecedented crisis in which a force once seen as incorruptible becomes a new and terrifying weapon wielded against humanity. There is also the grim possibility that the Legion's increasing presence signals a greater cosmic reckoning. Their frequent appearances at pivotal moments suggest that their purpose may be tied to key events that could shape the galaxy's fate. Some fear that their increasing visibility is a precursor to a final, galaxy-shattering war in which they will either play the role of saviors or serve as omens of a reckoning from which there is no return. If the Legion is tied to some unknown prophecy or cosmic balance, their final act may come at a time when the galaxy is least prepared for it, with consequences that could either save or doom the Imperium entirely. In a more personal sense, the survivors of battles where the Legion intervened continue to spread stories of their encounters, influencing the next generation of Imperial leaders, soldiers, and citizens. This generational impact means that even without their physical presence, the idea of the Legion persists, shaping Imperial culture in subtle yet significant ways. Young recruits who grow up hearing stories of spectral warriors may enter battle with either blind faith or crippling fear, depending on how those tales are told. The long-term psychological effects of their legend could shape the future of war itself, influencing how battles are fought and how victory or defeat is perceived. Perhaps the most concerning question for the Imperium is what would happen if the Legion were to disappear entirely. Their sporadic appearances have become so ingrained in certain war fronts that their absence during critical moments could shatter the morale of forces accustomed to their aid. Entire campaigns could collapse if Imperial commanders mistakenly believe the Legion will come to their rescue only to find themselves abandoned. The uncertainty surrounding their presence or absence adds an unpredictable factor to every war, making it difficult to determine when hope is warranted and when it is a dangerous illusion. In the broader context of galactic history, the Legion of the Damned represents a paradoxical force of both order and chaos. They restore balance by turning the tide of doomed battles, but they also sow confusion and fear through their unexplained nature. Their legacy has the potential to either unite or divide, inspire or terrify, depending on how their story unfolds in the millennia to come. Whether their interventions will lead to salvation or catastrophe remains one of the greatest uncertainties in the Warhammer universe. A reminder that even the most miraculous saviors may carry the seeds of unforeseen disaster. As the galaxy plunges ever deeper into darkness, the Legion of the Damned stands as both a symbol of hope and an omen of finality. Their long-term significance may well be determined not only by their future actions, but by how the Imperium chooses to interpret their presence. Whether they are remembered as spectral guardians or silent judges, their story is far from over, and its conclusion may shape the fate of the Imperium and all who live within it.